Yes, indeed. What's happening? Wednesday night. I'm excited to be coming at y'all live once again. Our little weekly, mostly every week tradition during this shutdown, quarantine, COVID pandemic, whatever you want to call it. I have to say hello to my trusty engineer, Nick Solnick over here. We try to get better every week, add a little new something every week. Nick was like, hey man, I can use my phone as a camera and chime in to OBS. So there he is, responsibly wearing his mask and distanced, but he's the man behind the scenes. He's like, look, I can throw up your logo. I can throw up your virtual tip jar. So, yeah, we're having fun in here. There you go. Look at that. Look at all these things. Yes, indeed. Awesome. And he's got a foot switch, so he can chime in and say
Hey,
hello.
everybody.
Say hello.
All of the buttons. I have a lot of buttons to press.
All the buttons. But, yeah, this is fun. You know, making a little bit of progress and also trying to learn how to do this so that even once we come out of this, we can still stream and come to y'all. We have streamed from the sidewalk of Tipitina's with Joe R. and Danny Abel. We have streamed from the Columns Hotel with David Torkanowski and James Singleton. It's been a fun process. So last week, I had a lot of fun playing for y'all and giving y'all a little bit of a peek behind what it's like to create and play in the studio and make music. And last week I played a play along by a great drummer named Jake Reed. And I showed a few different ways that I could have approached that play along. So that kind of got me excited to show y'all a little bit of a peek behind maybe some tunes that y'all are more familiar with. That tune that I just played is a Galactic song called Dollar Diva. Scott Guyon, shout out to Scott Guyon, one of my longtime friends. He did the cover art for that, and that is hanging. The original of that is hanging at the house. And Scott went on to do the 50th Jazz Fest poster. And then this year's poster of Dr. John, the Jazz Fest that never happened. But I'm just kind of telling y'all some stories. Maybe I'm giving y'all more information than you want to know. But Dollar Diva, that tune is a Galactic staple. We play it all the time. But just now, I intentionally tried to play it differently and play some different beats on it and show you that when creating in the studio, sometimes you'll come up with something, and if you're working with other artists, like I am working with Galactic, and I'll play something, and sometimes they might love it. Sometimes, you know, they might say, try something else. So what you hear on the record is usually what we like to call art by democracy, and it's usually something that we've come up with that we're all digging on. What I just played for y'all was some other beats that I've either come up with more recently or grew up with. I threw in some Johnny Vodakovich snare drum stuff that I love. I threw in some more recent Mardi Gras Indian variation stuff that I've come up with. All just to kind of show you that when you're in the studio and you're recording, things could go different ways. And what you hear on the record could have turned out differently. But it makes it on the record, then we hear it over and over and over, and it becomes what we know. And if we hear it played differently, sometimes we really dig it. Sometimes we're like, that's not the way the song goes. But I wanted to show y'all, like, on the record, the beat on the verse goes like this. And keep in mind, what I'm hearing is shake digga digga bake digga digga boom dig dump bump bump boom deck dun gun bunk gong 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 gong. It's basically a 3/2 clave. So there's so many different things. As y'all who have tuned in and seen me talk and demonstrate stuff, you know that there's so many different things that we could put with that 3/2 clave. So on the record, what's going on is this. Okay, so that's what's going on the record. And I can demonstrate that, and I will in a second. But just now, for the first verse, I felt like doing this. And then for the second verse, to change it up, I played the same thing basically, but put the right hand on the hi-hat. So all of those things could possibly work because they're all over the same accent structure. And just to give you a little peek behind the scenes of how we create, when we start making a galactic record, I will go in and I'll play a bunch of beats, some things that I've been working on lately, some things that I've been like, yeah, I really want to put this on a record, some things that I just kind of come up with on the fly, some things that I might have heard on my way driving over to the studio. And I'll play all these things and I'll usually lay them down to a click. And, you know, I might think this is the coolest beat in the world. But that might be too busy for the verse of a song, right? So I could take that and play the same rhythm, but strip it down, right? So I'm gonna play that beat again, but then I'm gonna strip it down. It's gonna be physically the same thing, same quote sticking, but texturally, I'm gonna strip it down so that it'll fit sonically underneath a vocal for a verse, right? So starting off with the busier version, then breaking it down to what actually made the record, right? What actually got picked to be on the record. right? And as I was talking about last week, sometimes when you're working with artists or with your band or with a producer, you might play something and they might say, you know, I love that, but can you change this about it? I love that thing you're doing with your left hand on the cowbell and your right hand on the toms, but can you make it simpler? Can you break it down? Can you make it less busy? Or you might even get, I don't like that at all. Can you come up with something completely different? Or can you play that groove, but can you do it all on the toms? Sure, no problem. So when you're working with other musicians, other artists, you can't get too married to your own ideas. Sometimes you have to work with others and play nice with others. And you know, a lot of y'all have heard me talk about this a little bit, but the way that I came up with one of the stickings that I use in this song a lot is the man that I love to call one of my best friends and my arch nemesis, Ben Ellman, because I love Ben like a brother. But he often challenges me to think differently, which sometimes in the moment I might rebuke or rebuff, but then he helps me think of or come up with things that I may have never thought of. So just to give you a little background on some of these ideas that I'm thinking of, you know, a lot of you guys have already heard me talk about some of these stickings, but trying to give it to you from a different angle. So just now I played some of that stuff on the toms. Well, it originally came from the toms when playing a Dirty Dozen tune, thinking I was slick, getting my snare drum stuff together, and the bass line being bo do da do do da do do da do da do go do da do da do da. So I played that in a galactic rehearsal, thinking I was getting my right, left, right, left, right, left, Johnny Vodakovich sticking together. And I was pretty proud of myself after we finished that run through the song. We weren't recording, we were just in rehearsal. And I mean, this is 20 years ago now. And then Ben Ellman says to me, that's cool, but would you play something, could you try something on the toms? And I'm sure I must have looked at him with a face that looked like, are you effing kidding me? And he knows me so well, even back then. He was like, don't look at me like that. He's like, just try it. So I did, and I just threw sticks at drums, and I came up with this. And in the moment, I was thinking to myself, wow, this is pretty cool. I like this. But I didn't want to tell Ben that. And then when we got done, he said, see, that sounded good. I was like, yeah, because I made it sound good. I've got Nick laughing over here. But so that made me think of something differently. And I tried it. And then I stuck around after rehearsal and figured out what it was. And then those of you who know me, you've seen me demonstrate that. So I'll give myself a shameless plug and say if you want to see me demonstrate that, there's a full lesson on it in the academy. Nick, we put up the description, right? So anybody that wants to check out StantonMooreDrumAcademy.com, I've got a 14-day trial. You can go on there and see a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about right now explained in detail with notation. So with downloadable PDFs and notation on the screen and all that stuff. That's what Nick and I have spent a lot of our time in here doing. And shout out to Virgil Beddock, my first videographer who spent a lot of time in here. I spent some time writing a reference letter for him, and I hope that he gets the position he's going for. And I have to give credit where credit is due. I started the whole academy with lessons filmed by Virgil in this spot. And so, great guy, fantastic guy. I love him. And there would be no Stanton Moore Drum Academy content if it wasn't for Virgil and us, figuring out stuff as we go along. And now Nick and I figuring out stuff as we go along. There he is. So yeah, if you're interested in what I'm presenting, I would love for you to check out the Academy. Sorry, not sorry, to give myself a shameless plug. So,
Oh, I'm gonna do that.
hold on, what's that? Oh, look at that. Well, yeah, Nick, giving another shameless plug. During this time, while I can't tour and can't play gigs, in the traditional sense, we can stream, but the virtual tip jar is open. I hate to mention it too much, but it is there and open, and all help is greatly appreciated, and I do mean that. So, thank you. So my whole point of what I'm talking about right now is that, a song that I play all the time with Galactic, and I usually play it pretty similarly from night to night, but, I could play it a number of different ways. I could have played it a number of different ways, and that could have made the record. But what's on the record is something that we all felt comfortable with. And then when I'm here in the studio, it's fun to now start talking about different ways that I could play stuff that I play all the time, and different approaches. But the point that I'm trying to land upon is it's okay if what you play isn't immediately loved by the people that you're playing with. Don't take it to heart. Don't let it bruise your ego. Just have several more ideas in your back pocket that you could be like, okay, no problem. What about this? What about this? What about any number of things? So, just for kicks, Nick, start it over again. And what if, just crazy ideas, right? But sometimes Robert Mercurio, Ben Elman, they produce most of the Galactic stuff. And what if they said, hey, why don't you try it with brushes? Why not? I'm like, sure, I'll try it with brushes. So let's try Daladivo with brushes.
All right.
So I was playing it with brushes, and then I realized, oh yeah, I just talked to Derek Zimmerman, product manager for LP, and we were talking about this LP Tambo stick, and I'm gonna film a little bit for him and LP after we get done. So I saw that in my stick bag. I was like, oh yeah, let me try that, right? So there's so many different things we can try. Like, I've been doing this, but let me do it with this Tambo stick. This is an idea that I've been experimenting with since about March, and I'm gonna try it right now with my left hand over here, my right hand on these mini timbales, and moving stuff around. So Nick, let's try it again. And I haven't tried this. Hopefully I can make it from here down to the snare drum with this Tambo stick. I'm kind of putting myself in the hot seat, but let's try it. We'll try it live. From the top. So if I were gonna do that on the record, I would probably want to shed that for a few more minutes and get it a little bit more natural, second nature feeling. But just trying to show you guys how at least I come up with some ideas. And sometimes you just throw ideas at the wall. And right now, I mean, because we're in shutdown coronavirus mode, I'm trying things. Like, I'm just like kind of throwing stuff at the wall, and I'm letting y'all see behind the curtain a little bit. But normally I would try stuff like that, and then some of it might make the record, some of it might not, some of it might make another record or make somebody else's record, or it might turn into a lesson. And then some of you might be wondering too, oh, how do I get that drumless play along of Dollar Diva? And the answer is subscribe to Stanton Drum Academy. I've got a whole bunch of play alongs up there, and some of the guys have been doing some of their own versions of some of these galactic. Look at that. That's awesome. Nick, you're having too much fun.
So many buttons.
So many things, so many technological toys.
So many buttons.
So many buttons.
What have you been doing with your quarantine?
I know, right? I mean, we've been trying to make it so that we can survive through this and hopefully thrive after this.
Yeah. Well, dude, we're I got a camera. Hey, yeah. So we're about halfway through. We got a bunch of questions.
We're about halfway through. Where does the time go? I mean,
All right.
this happens every week where I'm like, oh my goodness, we're getting closer to the end.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Time flies when you're having fun. So we usually like to start with some general questions.
I got
and
a
then
great one.
What's that?
I got a great one.
You got a great one. Nick's been perusing the questions and comments. He's got a few selected. Let it rip, Nick.
First question is, who does your hair? Because it's always looking great.
That's a great question. And the answer to that is Ashley Mack at Salon Element cuts my hair.
Shout out to Ashley.
And then
Yeah.
that's it. And
Um,
shout out to Ashley Mack. Thanks for keeping me looking good. And yep, that recommendation of Ashley came from my good friend Mr. Doug Rodick. So shout out to Doug. You know, I mean, what we miss about gigging and touring is the hang beforehand and after, and going to different cities and seeing your friends in those cities. So I like to give shout outs to my friends and people whenever they might pop up in a question or pop up relevant to something that I'm answering. So there you go. All right, you got another one, Nick.
All right. This is from Paul Kennedy from YouTube. Last week you stated that you grew up listening to punk rock, and I'm curious what bands in particular you used to listen to, how those bands influenced you, and in what you're doing right now.
Yeah, now that's a great question. So some of the bands that I was listening to were bands like The Descendants, Minor Threat, and Black Flag, and then started getting into the Minutemen, and listening to the Minutemen led me into discovering the Meters and listening to the Meters. And once I listened to the Meters, and shout out to Brad for playing the Meters at a party at his house, like when I was like 16, 17 years old. And then once I heard the early instrumental Meters records, of course I had heard some of the Mardi Gras tunes and stuff like that growing up. But once I started really getting into like the first 3 instrumental Meters records, the Meters, Look a Pie Pie, and Struttin', then I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. So I was listening to some of those bands growing up, and I loved passionate, aggressive punk rock. And then once I started getting into passionate, aggressive funk, then I was like all in on that and started transitioning over to funk. And yeah, and here I am now. So,
Yeah.
and then, I mean, bands that I actually saw like in person were bands like Exploited, and all got to see Bill Stevenson play drums, drummer for the Descendants. I mean, that was amazing, so of course tons of local punk rock hardcore bands. I mean, that's how I started meeting and hanging with Pepper Keenan, is on that scene. And so, in local hardcore bands, I mean, shout out to Exhorter and Chris Nail. I mean, Chris Nail studied with Marty Hurley. And back in those days, I mean, and still to this day, man, I mean, getting to see Exhorter live, that was unbelievable. It was amazing. And I was right there with Scott Guyon, checking a lot of that stuff out. So, Kyle Melanson, shout out to Kyle Melanson, Peter Barnes, my buddies that I used to go see those bands with. So, yes, indeed.
Do you have any new recordings coming out anytime soon?
I've been focusing more on the Drum Academy and filming lessons during this time and streaming. And we're going to start trying to do Tuesdays. I think December 22nd will be our first stream from David Torkanowski's house. So I'm working on new music and performing, but, making records costs money. And right now, I'm trying to spend money on things that are going to bring us income during this time. And records often take a long time to recoup. I love making records, but right now I'm trying to do things that are going to help save us in the more immediate future.
Just coming straight from that, someone asked, Mike Hennessy on YouTube asked, How do you feel touring and the gigging scenes from arenas to clubs will bounce back from the pandemic for both musicians and concert goers? And I guess you could speak as a venue owner.
Yeah, I mean, as a venue owner, as a lot of people know this, but for those of you who don't yet, I co-own Tipitina's. Shout out to Tips, with my bandmates in Galactic. So not only have we been impacted and do we have to start thinking differently as a band, but we've also been impacted and have to start thinking differently as a club. And from the club owner side, as Nick just asked, what we're planning on is, as things get safe, having tables sectioned off with table service and doing what we can as we can safely. And I don't foresee there being some, okay, it's over, and then we open the doors and we put 800 people into Tipitina's. I don't see it as a grand reopening, although I would love that. That would be amazing. It's probably going to be very gradual as we can, safely, as we get out of this. And I mean, believe me, I would love to go play on stage at Tipitina's in front of 800 people tonight or this weekend. We usually play on the weekends with Galactic, but it's hard to imagine that happening. And I hope that we're headed in the right direction and that we will get there eventually. And I feel confident that we're headed in the right direction and that we're going to get there. It's just going to take time, and exactly how it's going to look. It's kind of a day-to-day thing right now. And even we're doing some outdoor sidewalk shows on Friday afternoons, 4 to 6 p.m. for happy hour, and then Saturday noon to 2. And we're doing small musical acts outside, nobody allowed in the building, serving beverages from the side window, and just trying to keep alive, stay alive, keep being creative, and with some creativity, ingenuity, a lot of hard work, and a lot of brainstorming, I feel confident that we will eventually get through this. And it's gonna be a challenge, as it is, as we're seeing that it is.
Let's see. Do you want to stay broad, or you want to get more specific?
If you've got a good general one.
Well, someone just asked.
Excuse me.
Someone just asked, if asked by him, would you consider recording or maybe even touring with Steve Winwood in the future?
Of course. I love Steve Winwood. And it came up the other day. We were talking about how great Steve Winwood was. Still is, but was at like the age of, what was he, 16, 17, when he recorded Gimme Some Lovin' with Spencer Davis. And Steve Winwood is an amazing organ player and songwriter and vocalist. And of course, I would play with Steve Winwood. Anybody who wants to pass that message on to Steve, I would love to play with you, Steve. So, yes.
It's a lot of COVID questions. So getting more into the drum realm, someone's trying to is moving into a smaller place and is looking at electronic drums.
Yes. You've got it on. You do. Your lavalier mic. Okay, so somebody's moving into a smaller place and
it is
considering electronic drums.
Electronic drums, been looking at Roland V drums. I think this is like a general question. I hear from a lot of people. It's just like, I deal with it too, because I live in a small spot. But suggestions of what to do when there are sound constraints and you want to play some drums?
That is a fantastic question. Roland V drums, I love them. I have some and I love them. I've gotten many hours of shedding done on Roland V drums. And also an option is the Remo silent stroke heads and Zildjian low volume cymbals. To the human ear, those things are about as loud. And then I love the low volume cymbals and silent stroke heads because you can take any old kit that's been laying around and convert it and for not a lot of bread and be shedding and be practicing pretty quickly. So if you want to invest in some Roland V drums, that's a great option to go with. If you've got a kit and you're on the fence as to whether or not you really want to get back into drums, or you're not sure if you're going to have the time, silent heads and low volume cymbals are a great way to go. And then I'm dealing with that too, so my wife and I both working from home. I've got real drums set up at the front of the house, and then in another room in the house, I've got drums with silent stroke heads and low volume cymbals. And I'm probably going to get some pads for the pedals to soak up some of the vibration, because even though I'm playing on the silent strokes and the low volume cymbals, you can still feel the vibrations and hear that a little bit. And my wife is doing Zooms and taking meetings from the house, so even myself, I have to consider that. And then sometimes I wake up early in the morning. Sometimes I wake up. This morning I woke up at 5:45, and I decided to write this morning, working on some new lessons. But sometimes I just jump in the car and I'm here by like 6:30 a.m. shedding and practicing here, and that that's also a great way to get in some time, is showing up. I mean, if you have an office or a place where you could set up drums and show up before anybody shows up, that's an option too. Waking up early is an option.
Cool.
I've grown to love it. Love waking up early and getting some stuff done before the rest of the world starts emailing or calling or texting. So, sometimes we have to get creative on how, where, and when we can practice. Even as a professional drummer, I still have to get creative with when I can practice.
I used those silent strokes for a good 6 months of the pandemic until finally a practice space opened up that I could rent.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're vibe too. Like I've seen a couple drummers, they use it as kind of an auxiliary cymbal too on their main kit, which is, I like those silent cymbals and silent heads. Things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic development in the drumming world. Not to sound like if when I was younger, but if I would have had those when I was younger, I would have set up a kit with those and had that so that I could practice more, right? Because I would have to stop playing by 9 o'clock in respect to the neighbors. So now that we have those options, we can take advantage of them.
So
And of course, other companies make practice pad options too. Vic Firth, DW, they make pad options that you can put on the drums, and those are great options as well.
sick. So I'm just scrolling up. You got so many comments. Just a heads up, y'all. There is a bot that is commenting on the Facebook. If you could report that, that would be great.
Yes.
It's getting in the middle.
If y'all can report the bot, that would be great.
Report the bots. They're asking to you to send them their Cash App. Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do that. That's not. I don't think there's much we can do about that right now.
No.
Just everybody, please know that that's a bot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So somebody requested you play a shuffle.
Play a shuffle. I would love to play a shuffle. And Nick, can you pull up to here? Can we pull that up? I'll play a shuffle by myself while you pull that up.
I'll do my best.
He'll do his best.
What is it called? What's it called?
It's called Up to Here.
Up to Here.
It's one of the play-alongs that we did on the first live where I did play-alongs. So, sure, I'm going to play a shuffle, and Nick's going to...
I'm working on it.
He's going to pull up the play-along. Here it is. Oh.
Oh, you hear it? Cool.
I heard it already.
All right, great.
So, look at that. We're gonna just play along to this play-along.
Ready?
I'm ready. Look at that. We take requests.
To a point. Cool.
To a point. Did they hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, to a point. But yeah, I am actually looking for more play-alongs to play along to. So
Open source.
open source.
Open source, royalty free.
Okay.
Royalty free. So
Nice. Also, I talked to Joe Ashlar today. He's going to create some play-alongs for me, which is awesome.
So you might find so the person who requested the shuffle was David Mahoney.
Ah, Mahoney.
Yeah.
Very cool, man. Well, thanks for chiming in. If I would have known that was you, I would have tried to play it better. But ching. Dave Mahoney, shout out, man. Thanks for tuning in, brother. I miss playing Snug Harbor and having you, David Mahoney, show up after coming off of one of your gigs on the Natchez and bringing me a new cymbal to check out. And us hanging, having a glass of wine, listening to cymbals in person after Snug Harbor, playing in front of people. I miss that kind of stuff. So, yeah, we're gonna get through this, I hope. And but it's great to hear from you, David. I miss seeing you in person, but it's great to hear from you here. Thanks, my man.
So, man, I think this is actually a great question, especially because you're doing it. Sometimes like you have a count off, or sometimes there's a click track or something like that. Someone wants to ask if you, There's also some questions about playing to a metronome, but this one specifically, any tips about playing to a click track?
Yes.
Don't fear the click.
Don't what?
Don't fear the click.
Don't fear the click. In this day and age, you can't fear the click if you want to work. So, I grew up in a time where some people were like, "Oh yeah, don't play to a click; it'll mess up your feel," or like, if you want to work, if you want to make money playing drums, in this day and age, you need to learn how to play to a click. It's just the way that it is, because the way that people work now, they'll record all the instruments and then they'll send it to a drummer to play on it, and they expect the drummer to have his own recording situation. And more drummers are getting set up to do that, especially going through this process of quarantine. So I encourage you to shed, practice, get comfortable playing to a click, but also be able to play without it. And you don't be married to the click. Don't use it as a crutch. So that song right there, that's a shuffle, and I wanted that tune, that play along, to not have a click. So that play along does not have a click. Dollar Diva has a click that hopefully you can't hear. So it's in one channel and I get the click, but hopefully you weren't hearing the click. And Nick says, no, they weren't. But there's a click on Dollar Diva. So there are some tunes that I do without the click. Like that tune I did last week, that Jake Reed play along, that starts with a click and then doesn't have a click, but it does have claps in places. And then there are little clicks in the spaces where the drums have to play. There's a play along that I have called Biggins Get the Ball Rolling. That was on one of my records, maybe Stanton More 3. And then I had Robert Walter and Will Bernard create a play along of that for me, for like a PASIC or something maybe. And because the original was all recorded at Preservation Hall with no separation. So that song has no click except when it gets to the drum solo at the end, there's an audible cowbell so that you can play in time and make those hits. So different tracks of mine, different play-alongs, have different situations. All the Groove Alchemy play-alongs have no click because I wanted people to focus on playing to the music. And then also I wanted it so that when I played those play-alongs live, there was like at a clinic or a masterclass or a PASIC or anything like that, there was no way that it could get messed up and the click could come out of the PA and the audience would hear the click because there is no click. So, but here in the studio, when we have time to sound check stuff and all that, and I trust Nick, and so there are some things like the Galactic play-alongs that I'm doing that have click. And then there are some sessions that you may do where you may play to the click and then turn it in, and then the person you're doing the session for says, oh no, don't play to the click, turn the click off and play to the music. And the music might be ahead, and you need to go with that.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are different situations, and the best advice I can give is shed to a click, shed playing without the click, record yourself, and then listen to the beginning, listen to the end, see if it changed. But be adaptable because there are different situations that are going to pop up, and you don't want to be stuck in one way of doing things. Because if you want to hit things with sticks and then have people hand over money, you need to be able to play well with others, both literally, figuratively, and musically. So, on that note, look at that, it's 6:59. I think we started right on time.
Close.
Close.
Close to it.
I will say there's the virtual tip jar. All proceeds, contributions, donations go to needy families. Ours.
Yes. Yes.
That's an old Johnny Vodakovich joke, but it's actually true
Yes.
in this situation.
It's all.
I'm laughing,
very
but it's not funny.
I gotta pay rent.
Yeah. And I've got to pay a mortgage. So please contribute if you can. Also, StantonMooreDrumAcademy.com, 14-day trial. That link is in the description as well, or you can just go to StantonMooreDrumAcademy.com and hit sign up, join now, and it'll lead you to the 14-day trial, where you can check out a lot of what I'm talking about in detail, and hopefully you'll stay on board and become a subscriber. I would love to have you in the community. It's a super interactive, awesome community on the Academy. Shout out to all my Academy members who may be watching tonight. Always appreciate y'all seeing y'all in here as well.
Yeah, we got Sona this weekend.
And Spirit of New Orleans Drum Camp this weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 9:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Nick and I will be in here. Each day we're doing 4 1.5-hour sessions.
Drinking lots of coffee.
Making lots of coffee, talking about a lot of drums. And if you decide that you want to sign up for the virtual camp, I think there's one spot left. And you can go to StantonMoore.com and click on Virtual Sono and join that. I've got like one spot. I'm so excited that so many people signed up, and we've got one spot left before we're sold out. So that's incredible. It's like a family reunion every year. This year it's going to be on Zoom, so we're going to be able to see each other. We're going to be able to toast each other with coffee and Topo Chico and tea and whatever it is that you might be drinking throughout the day. Hopefully you're not drinking till the end of the day, but yes indeed.
Thanks.
Looking forward to seeing y'all, And hopefully we'll fill that one spot for Sono after this. But thanks for reminding me, Nick.
No problem.
We're going to be in here all weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 8 hours a day, taking a break for lunch, taking a couple breaks in between each session, but answering a lot of questions, mailing out a lot of PDFs of